To see some new ones that I don't know. As always, it is an honor to speak to you. And Amy and I are thrilled to visit again. If you'd like to open your Bibles to Joshua chapter 7, we're going to be spending the bulk of our time there this evening. As you are turning there, I will tell you about a movie I watched. The main character was an architect. His goal was to be partner at his firm. He worked the long hours. His mind became a steel trap when it came to that goal. And so many things seemed to be getting in his way. Sadly, he viewed his family and his commitments to his family as something that were getting in his way. Always, things seemed to thwart all of his efforts, till finally, he just exclaimed almost to the heavens, "Can I finally get a break?" As he was out doing an errand for his wife, he ran into a salesman named Morty. And Morty said, "I hear you're looking for a break. Well, this thing right here will help you. I don't have it in the catalog yet, so I kind of just have to give it to you." It was a remote control. He continued to tell our main character that it would control every aspect of his life. He didn't really believe him, but he took the remote home. The dog started barking at him while he was trying to work. He reached out with the remote control almost laughingly and pushed the mute button. To his astonishment, the dog became silent. Upon this discovery, he tried the remote on so many other aspects. He found out he could skip chapters of his life. He could rewind and look at past experiences. The most dangerous function was the fast forward, where anytime anything seemed to get in his way or distract him from work, he could just fast forward through it and get back to work when he wanted. What he didn't realize is this remote learned from his behavior. And every time a similar experience would come up, that remote would fast forward it so he could get back to what in his heart of hearts was most important. In the end, he had fast forwarded through his whole life. He was partner at the firm. But as he lay dying with nothing to show, going through his head were the thoughts, "If I only knew, if I only knew." I am certain that if he only knew what his selfish behavior would have caused, he never would have engaged in it. Then Joshua and all Israel with him took Achan the son of Zerah, the silver, the mantle, the bar of gold, his sons, his daughters, his oxen, his donkeys, his sheep, his tent, and all that belonged to him. And they brought them up to the valley of Achor. Joshua said, "Why have you troubled us? The Lord will trouble you this day." And all Israel stoned them with stones, and they burned them with fire after they had stoned them with stones. They raised over him a great heap of stones that stands to this day. And the Lord turned from the fierceness of his anger. Therefore the name of that place has been called the Valley of Achor to this day. I imagine as Achan and his family were seized and all of their belongings were snatched up, and they stood with the entire congregation around them, and the stones began raining down. And Achan looked down and saw those items that he stole. I imagine what went through his head was, "If only I had known." Thankfully, we can read the Bible and we can know. We can learn from the examples that are recorded, and we can do better. Tonight, we're going to focus on learning about sin from the story of Achan. There are some things that we need to take note of concerning sin. First, sin does not take into account your past accomplishments. I'm sure we all know Diana Ross, right? Very famous singer, entertained us for many years. Well, Diana Ross went into a restaurant. She was supposed to be meeting some people, and the staff said, "Well, Miss Ross, you're going to have to wait till your companions show up before we can seat you." It was normal. That's what the rules were. Well, instead of waiting, she shouldered past all the staff and went and sat herself at a table and didn't want to pay attention to the rules. And the staff said, "Well, Miss Ross, if that's how you're going to act, we're just not going to serve you. You're going to have to go somewhere else." To which she began to exclaim, at the top of her lungs, making a huge spectacle and kind of a fool of herself, "Don't you know who I am?" Well, they knew who she was. But the truth is, it didn't matter. The rules are the rules. It's the same way with sin. Satan doesn't care who you are. It doesn't matter what you've done, what you've accomplished. With Achan in Joshua 7:1, it simply records that he sinned. You know, it didn't matter that Achan had been in the wanderings in the wilderness, had seen an entire generation fall from unfaithfulness while he was faithful. It didn't matter that Achan had been guided by the pillar of cloud and the pillar of fire. It didn't matter that Achan had crossed the Jordan and seen the waters stack up upon themselves miles away. It didn't matter that he saw the monument built at Gilgal when they camped that night. It also didn't matter that he marched around the city of Jericho with the fighting men of Israel, and on the seventh day marched around 7 times and then shouted with all the other fighting men and watched the walls fall down. It didn't matter what Achan had accomplished. Satan came for him. He faced temptation, and sin got him. The application of this for Christians you can find in 1 Corinthians chapter 10 and verse 12. And that is, "Therefore let him who thinks he stands take heed lest he fall." See, what was going on in Corinth at that time is a lot of Christians were coming out of idolatry. Well, they wanted to go and they wanted to participate in the feasts at the temples of the idols. They wanted to eat that meat. And their rationale was, "I can handle that. I've been there. I've been through that. I know that the idol worship is wrong. I also know that idol isn't anything but a block of stone or a block of wood. So I can go and I can partake of that." And Paul said, "Careful. You might think you know, but you really don't. Let him who thinks he stands take heed lest he fall." You see, Corinth was one of the most immoral, idolatrous, and sexually deviant places on the planet. And you could run into all 3 of those characteristics in an idol's temple. Oftentimes accompanying those feasts was temple prostitution. So here we have Christians saying, "No, I just want to go eat some meat. It's okay. I've been through that. I know that that idol worship is wrong. I'm not going to get drawn into that." And Paul says, "You really don't understand. You're not as strong as you think you are." In other words, it doesn't matter what you've done in the past. Sin is still going to come for you. Today, Christians may think that they can handle it. Christians may think, "I've been there, I've done that, I brought back the t-shirt as a souvenir." The truth is, it doesn't matter your standing. It doesn't matter your experience. Sin is still going to come for you. So beware. Second, we need to understand that sin is cunningly designed to ensnare. Show me the hunters in the room. Do I have any hunters here tonight? Okay, you're going to have to find a hunter friend and ask them about this. But I'm here to tell you, as far as the sport of hunting goes, there have been so many advances that it's almost not a contest anymore. Anymore, if a hunter can see an animal and says, "I'm going to get that animal," the animal almost doesn't stand a chance. We have high-powered rifles that can project a bullet for hundreds of yards with pinpoint accuracy. We have scopes that allow you to see better than a bird of prey. We have night vision so that animals that normally are nocturnal and kind of take safety in that cloak of darkness no longer have that safety. And then we have baiting. I went to a fellow's house and he had a bearskin rug. And he said, "I killed that bear with some arrows. I picked it up. It was enormous. I said, how did you get him? They said, I baited him for 3 days with donuts. Well, the truth is, that bear didn't stand much of a chance. He couldn't stand up to the advances in hunting. Did you know Satan is the greatest hunter? Did you know that Satan has the best tools in existence? 1 John 2, 15 through 17 names them off. You know them. The lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, and the boastful pride of life. Satan plies these tools, and it's systematic. Do you believe me? Joshua chapter 7 and verse 21 shows us the process of sin. When I saw among the spoil a beautiful mantle from Shinar, and 200 shekels of silver, and a bar of gold, 50 shekels in weight, then I coveted them and took them, and behold, they are concealed. Some versions of the Bible will say hidden in the earth inside my tent with the silver underneath it. Note the process. I saw among the spoil. I coveted them. I took them, and I hid them. I saw, I coveted, I took, and I hid. There is the process, the method of sin. That is how Satan hunts us and ensnares us. There's more. There are other places where this process shows up. Genesis chapter 3, verses 6 and verse 8. Eve saw the fruit. That it was pleasing to the eye, lust of the eyes. That it was good for food, lust of the flesh. That it was desirable to make one wise. The boastful pride of life, wanted to be like God. She saw the fruit. She took the fruit. Gave to her husband with her, and they ate. I saw it, I coveted, I took. And what did they do when God came calling? They hid. I saw, I coveted, I took, and I hid. There is more. 2 Samuel chapter 11, we have the story of David, Bathsheba, and Uriah. And when David was out on his roof, what happened? He saw Bathsheba, that she was beautiful. The lust of the eyes. He took her, gave in to the lust of the flesh. And then when he found out, oh, I'm with child, he called Uriah back and he tried to cover it up. He hid. I saw, I coveted, I took, and I hid. And ultimately, when Uriah wouldn't go back to his house, he tried to hide it still further. Killed Uriah, took her as his wife. So that child would just appear, oh yes, that's just the king's child. I saw, I coveted, I took, and I hid. Are you ready for the creepy part? That great hunter, Satan, is using his greatest tools, and he's made his mind up that he wants you. His crosshairs are on the back of your head right now. You know the only thing that will save an animal when a hunter with all of these wonderful advantages comes for it? If it knows it's being hunted. Tonight, consider yourself warned. Satan wants you. He is coming for you. And sin is specifically designed to get you. Be warned. Flee from him. Third, sin affects more than just the sinner. Have any fans of the old show Bonanza? Bonanza with the Ponderosa and the Cartwrights? There was an episode where one of the neighbors dammed up a river on his property. And what that did is it cut off the flow of water to the Ponderosa. Well, that was the stream that they used to feed to water their flocks, to water all their cattle. And he said, well, this is my land. The river's on my land. I can dam it up if I want to. And their answer was, no, that affects more than just you. It affects everybody else. It was an interesting episode. I've already read to you Joshua 7, 24 through 26. And you know that Achan's sin affected him. It affected his family. But you know that's not the only people who were affected. At the battle of Ai, right after Achan sinned, right after Achan stole of the accursed things, 36 warriors of Israel fell. And it wasn't just that it cost them their lives. Their families had to deal with losing a father or a brother. You know, it wasn't just Achan and his family. It wasn't just the warriors and their families. What about Joshua? When the news came to him, he fell on his face. And then he was chastised by Jehovah the Almighty. That's no easy experience to go through. Joshua had to endure that because of Achan's sin. There is more. You ever wonder why a police officer, when he uses his weapon in the line of duty, takes someone's life? It is mandatory that he go through counseling. It's not that the officer did something wrong. It's not that he should feel guilty. The officer did what he had to do. He did what was right by the law. He did what was right morally. You know, if my life were being threatened and the officer pulled his weapon and took the life of the one assailing me, he did right by me. They have to go through counseling because taking a human life is so traumatic that it doesn't go away. It clings to you. It stays with you. You remember it forever. It's almost like you can't get it off of your hands. It won't come off. They took Achan and his family, and the whole nation stoned him. They held the rocks in their hands and threw them, and had to see those people die. They were doing what they were supposed to, but they had to live with the memory of that death forever. Sin affects so much more than just the sinner. I want you to think about sin tonight. I want you to think about sin that you're involved in. You know, we can talk about pornography, lying, stealing, adultery. We can talk about violence. We can talk about wrath. All of those sins, while you are in the midst of it, you just think about yourself. But everybody else is involved. So many other lives are touched by your decisions and your involvement in sin. Know that. Know that those actions that are so fueled by what you want affect so many other people. Know also that sin costs more than you can or want to pay. One of my most favorite old hymns is one called "Sin Will Take You Farther." And the lyrics go something like, sin will take you farther than you want to go, slowly but wholly taking control. Sin will leave you longer than you want to stay. Sin will cost you far more than you want to pay. We talked about the account in Genesis. Adam and Eve's sin cost them their innocence. It cost them a perfect place to live. It cost them an easy way of life. And most importantly, it cost them that relationship with God where they could look Him in the eyes. No more could that happen. Achan's sin cost way more than he wanted to pay. David's sin cost Uriah his life. David's sin cost a little baby its life. Sin costs more than you can or want to pay. Let's talk about your sin and my sin. Our sin costs so much. My God, why have you forsaken me? My sin put him there. Your sin put him there. And the question about this is, knowing what your sin costs, knowing what your sin causes, why is that anything you would ever want to have in your life? Why is that anything you would ever even want to toy with, to try to get close to without crossing the line? See, that's the rationale of so many Christians today. Well, I can get close to it, and I can just kind of keep that in arm's reach. Just so long as I'm not really embroiled in it, it's okay. And what they've forgotten is the truth, and God is all the way over here. But they've toyed with sin, and they've kept it beyond arm's reach. The truth is they've gotten too close. The truth is they've forgotten what sin costs. Know that sin costs more than you want to pay. Lastly, know that sin is escapable. Concerning airplanes, I've got some relatives that just got back to their home today. They were on a vacation, they had to fly. During that flight, there was something called the point of no return. The point of no return, all the way up to it, you can stop the plane. You can shut it down. Everybody will be okay. Nobody dies. There is no crash. There is no fire. Everything's fine. Past the point of no return, you can't come back. 1 Corinthians 10:13. This is following 1 Corinthians 10:12, where Paul warned them, let him who thinks he stands take heed lest he fall. Then he talks about how no temptation has overtaken you that's too great. And with every temptation, there is a means of escape. In the context there, the means of escape was don't even go. I want to go to the idol's temple. I want to eat that meat. It's just a meal. It's not a problem. Paul said there are temptations there that are too great. You don't want to be involved with those temptations. You may think you're standing, but you're going to fall. And then he says there is a means of escape. Later on he told them, don't even get involved. Don't even go to the idol's temple. That was their means of escape. Proverbs chapter 7 talks about this young man who is lured in by this crafty harlot. She was certainly a beautiful woman. And she had practiced her trade. She promised him things that he could only imagine. I've perfumed my bed. Let's delight ourselves with pleasure until the morning. And he was lured in by the temptation, then he was killed. You might think that a young man lured in like that would not stand a chance. But the answer is in the end of chapter 7 when it says, don't even go to her paths. Don't go near her door. Have nothing to do with it. I would suggest the same for Christians today. When it comes to sin, sin is escapable. And the way to escape the sin is not even to go close to it. Don't even put yourself in a situation where you can become involved in sin. Don't make it possible. Therein lies your means of escape. Sin is escapable. Christians, we have to learn some things concerning the story of Achan, concerning sin. One, that sin does not care who you are. It's going to come for you. 2, sin is designed specifically to ensnare you. 3, sin will affect more than just the sinner. 4, sin costs more than you can or want to pay. And 5, that sin is escapable. Know those things about sin. And this story will not have been written in vain. As a means of invitation, I want to point out one other element to the story. Joshua 7:19. Believe it or not, there is an element of mercy here. It was over with. Israel had been told there was sin in the camp. They had been told, you go out there and you sort through the people, tribe by tribe, family by family, clan by clan, man by man. And they did it. Achan was taken. It was done. It was over with. They knew where the sin was. They knew the penalty to be enacted. But in verse 19, there's this moment. Then Joshua said to Achan, my son, I implore you, give glory to the Lord, the God of Israel. and give praise to him, and tell me now what you have done. Do not hide it from me. This was a moment before Achan paid the price for his sin, for Achan to be right with God. This moment of mercy for him to confess what he had done, and for him to be prepared to meet his Maker as one of God's people. It's not hard to spell out, is it? Christians, tonight you might be in sin. There may be something in your life that ought not be. It may be something that you think is secret. But let me tell you, it's affecting more than just you, and it's going to cost more than you want to pay. And as is our custom, we offer that moment of mercy for the Christian to confess their sin, for the Christian to be forgiven. If you are in sin tonight and you need to take advantage of the moment of mercy, remember Joshua's words. Confess now what you've done, do not hide it. If you are subject to the invitation, you need to take advantage of that. Please come as we stand and as we sing.